your worries behind and join us for a special behind-the-scenes story of the making of Walt Disney's merry masterpiece, Fun and Fancy Free.
Now, what kind of a title is that?
Fun and Fancy Free. Walt Disney's 1947 feature, Fun and Fancy Free, is composed of multiple segments, a format called a package feature. The two stories, Mickey and the Beanstalk and Bongo, were originally developed as full-length feature films. Here's the behind-the-scenes story of how they were paired up to create a fun and fancy-free feature.
Walt had been building and building and building on his success. Each film a stepping stone, starting with Snow White, moving on Pinocchio, and then the incredible experiment of Fantasia, and then Dumbo and Bambi.
To keep his successful film series going, Walt Disney was constantly on the lookout for stories to bring to the screen.
We were going to do Jack and the Beanstalk, only make a feature out of it.
Disney was certainly familiar with the classic fairy tale of Jack and the Beanstalk. He had used the well-known story as the basis for a 1922 silent cartoon produced by his Laugh-O-Gram film company in Kansas City. Unfortunately, no prints of this film are known to exist. In 1933, he revisited the tale in Giant Land, a short with Mickey Mouse assuming the role of Jack. In 1938, Walt pitted Mickey against a giant again, this time as the brave little tailor.
Everything he did in the past, he would bring out forward into the present to perfect, which he did in the case of Jack and the Beanstalk.
With his experience as an adversary to giants, Mickey was a natural for the lead in this giant new feature-length film. His co-stars would be Donald Duck and Goofy.
It gave a feature film appearance to Mickey and Donald and Goofy. Now, these were worldwide stars, great cartoon stars known everywhere, but they were known for their short subject. Mickey had finally broken into feature films in Fantasia, but it was never really considered that they would carry a feature film until this one came along.
Development of Mickey and the Beanstalk as a full-length feature began on May 2nd, 1940. During that year, Walt Disney and several of his key storymen developed many of the ideas that would be contained in the finished film. The growth of the Beanstalk while Mickey, Donald, and Goofy are asleep. The gags at the giant's dinner table. And the role of the singing harp. At this same meeting, the suggestion was also made to use Foulfellow and Gideon from Pinocchio as the phonies who swindle Mickey out of his cow.
A wooden boy.
Since they don't appear in the final version, just who does Mickey trade his cow to in exchange for magic beans?
What do you mean, beans?
Here is the answer, in a never-before-seen sequence developed in 1940, but dropped when the story was tightened for fun and fancy free.
Come forward, please.
Your Majesty.
What errand brings you here?
Well, Your Honor, Your Majesty, it's about this cow.
For me? Oh, thank you, sir. How very generous of you.
Well,
Oh, but my good man, I couldn't think of taking your cow. Such generosity must not go unrewarded. Let me see. Oh, yes, here. A family heirloom. One of the last.
But really, what's in it?
Beans.
Beans?
Yes, magic beans. It has a beautiful legend. Let me read the legend to you. Faithful subject, good and kind, if fame and fortune thou wouldst find, O mystic spirit of ancient queens, plant with care these magic beans.
Archival evidence of the early development of the feature version of Mickey and the Beanstalk ends in the summer of 1941. At the same time, work on Bongo was begun. The story was written in 1930 for Cosmopolitan magazine by novelist Sinclair Lewis. Bongo was an unusually light-hearted story to come from Lewis, who was the first American to win the Nobel Prize for Literature.
What happened was that Walt suggested Bongo, and we read it, and we felt that wasn't quite suitable to us. And we wrote a everlasting disgrace, it turned out to be a very cute picture.
Since Bongo was a circus bear, there were early story notes suggesting that Bongo might even be a follow-up to Dumbo, using the same circus settings and some of the supporting cast, including the gossipy elephants.
Aren't they funny?
Early story sketches show a character design for Bongo that differs radically from the final one. The female bear who catches Bongo's eye went through similar revisions, as well as a couple of name changes, from Susie to Silverear to her final name, Lulubelle. Bongo's nemesis, Lumpjaw, was always a big hulking brute, but in some early designs he wore street clothes. In these early sketches, a few extra characters were present. Bongo had a chimpanzee for a valet, first named Beverly, then Chimpy. In addition, Bongo and Chimpy had a series of comic encounters with a pair of mischievous country cousin bear cubs. A partially completed script of Bongo was delivered on Monday, December 8, 1941, the day after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Just as Bongo and Mickey and the Beanstalk were at the height of their development, the world changed.
And then along came World War II, which did several things. First, it cut off the European market, which was a big source of income for the studio. Secondly, it took a lot of the artists and drafted them, so they lost a lot of their talent. And then finally, the Disney studio was virtually commandeered during the war to produce war-related films, training films, morale-boosting films, all sorts of films that related in one way or another to the war effort. He had to rebuild his studio from scratch, you might say, after World War II, and it was a tough thing to do. Financially, it was tough. It was tough to get back to where he had been critically, where people were looking to him for new innovations.